Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. I'm DarkCaseX. I believe you've all heard of the Simpson case. It is called the most complex murder trial in American history. It is also known as the most classic judicial case in human history. Its scale and far-reaching influence are rare in the world, hence its name, the trial of the century. It changed America's administrative system and elevated forensic science to an absolute high. It also further clarified that the American judicial system's emphasis on procedural justice and conclusive evidence has far surpassed the pursuit of truth and convicting the murderer. Of course, this case was also full of controversy. Even today, there are still many Americans discussing this case. So what exactly is this world-famous case all about? Let us first travel back to Los Angeles in the 1990s. To re-examine the details of the case for everyone. The protagonist, Simpson, full name Orenthal James Simpson, was born on July 17, 1947 in San Francisco. His parents had 4 children in total, and he was the third. It is worth noting that he was a black man. This point is crucial in this case. We know that the status of black people in America in the past was quite low. They were once called black slaves. Although the situation has improved today, there are still many people who look at them differently. The Simpson family, because of their dark skin, was naturally not well regarded. They lived in the slums and had a very hard life. There was almost no security in the slums. It was chaotic everywhere. Children fighting and chasing each other in the streets was the norm. Parents were also used to it. Moreover, as parents, it was already hard enough to support a large family, so how could they have the energy to mind the children? Therefore, children like Simpson in the slums were basically left to raise themselves. The frequent roughhousing allowed Simpson to develop a good pair of legs during his childhood. After all, the survival strategy of run if you can't win a fight is universal. In middle school, by virtue of running fast, Simpson made achievements in football. Originally, just playing ball in school was nothing special. At most, just gaining some cheers from classmates. But the appearance of one person caused a turning point in Simpson's fate. This person was the talent scout Willie Mays. At that time, he was with the San Francisco Giants baseball team. He found Simpson and painted a beautiful picture of an athlete's future for him. Simpson was greatly moved. He began to seriously consider how to walk his future path. He also trained very hard. Later, he went to study at the City College of San Francisco and performed even better in football games. Naturally, he became the star of the school's football team. This also led many universities to extend olive branches to him. In the end, Simpson chose the University of Southern California, also known as USC, and received an athletic scholarship from the school. In 1967 and 1968, he played as a running back for the school and performed extremely well. In 1967, Simpson rushed for 543 yards and 13 touchdowns, setting a national record at the time. In 1968, Simpson set another record with 383 carries for a total of 880 yards. He also won the Heisman Trophy. At that time, he was a star of tomorrow. His posters were plastered everywhere. It was also in this year that Simpson, while still a student, married his high school sweetheart, Marguerite L. Whitley. In 1969, Simpson officially entered professional football competition. In the first 3 years of his professional career, his performance could only be described as mediocre. But in the following years, it was as if he had been completely transformed. He set multiple records and led the NFL in rushing yards 4 times. In 1973, he became the first person to rush for over 2,000 yards in a single season. He also won the title of NFL Player of the Year. In 1977, Simpson was called one of the greatest running backs in American football history. But no one would have expected that his professional career would come to an abrupt end at its peak. Due to injury, he chose to retire in 1979. After retiring, Simpson, with his celebrity halo, lived a vibrant life. He took on numerous advertising endorsements, opened a film company and made movies, worked as a sports commentator on TV, served as the spokesperson for Hertz, America's largest car rental company, and so on. He made a great deal of money. As for his love life, Simpson, even before retiring, was frequently dating an 18-year-old nightclub waitress, Nicole Brown. He and his wife divorced in 1979, the same year he retired. In 1985, Simpson was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That same year, he and Nicole got married. Their marriage also failed to last. Over the years, the two were always in conflict, filled with a great deal of domestic violence. In 1992, the two filed for divorce. On October 15th of that year, both parties signed the divorce agreement. In the following 2 years, Simpson and Nicole remained in contact. They tried to reconcile several times, but ultimately, it didn't work out. On June 12, 1994, at 11:35 p.m., it's usually quite quiet outside at this time, but it was different today. An Akita dog was barking wildly outside. A passerby walking outside spotted the dog. From the expensive collar around the dog's neck, he knew the dog must have an owner and was just lost. He didn't know what to do with the dog. At this moment, his neighbor, Sukru Bostepe, walked over and said he could take the dog back to his apartment for now. The Akita, after arriving at Sukru's home, appeared very nervous and kept trying to run. Sukru thought the dog must want to go back to its own home, so he put a leash on the dog and followed behind it. Soon, the dog stopped in front of a condominium at 875 South Bundy Drive. Sukru decided to get closer for a look. That one look was unforgettable. A woman was lying on the ground, covered in blood. The walkway was also covered in bloodstains. Terrified, Sukru dialed 911. It was already past midnight. On June 13th at 12:13 a.m., patrol officer Robert Risky, who was patrolling nearby, arrived at the scene. He cautiously approached the house and saw a woman lying face down at the bottom of the steps leading to the front door. There were bloodstains everywhere on her body and the ground. Next to her was the body of a young and strong man. His head was propped against the iron fence. Robert realized he had encountered a heinous homicide. Just as he was about to use his radio to call for backup, he suddenly saw a photo hanging on the wall. He was all too familiar with this photo. It was the famous O.J. Simpson. To prevent information from leaking, Robert decided to use a phone to directly contact his immediate supervisor, David Rossi. David heard it and knew this was a difficult case, so he contacted his supervisor. At the same time, he called the LAPD command center. 28-year-old Ron Phillips was then the head of the Homicide Investigation Department at the LAPD West Side Precinct. He was in charge of this case. The first thing he did upon receiving the call was to call Detective Mark Furman, and the two immediately rushed to the scene to investigate. Subsequently, Phillips, Furman, and Officer Risky examined the scene. The female victim was indeed Simpson's ex-wife, Nicole. She was face down, lying at the bottom of the stairs leading to the door. She had multiple stab wounds to her head and neck. The main artery in her neck was completely severed. Although the walkway leading to the stairs was covered in blood, Nicole's bare feet were clean, without a trace of blood. There were also almost no defensive wounds on her hands. The other victim was named Ronald Goldman, 25 years old, a waiter at a nearby Italian restaurant. He also had multiple stab wounds on his body and neck. The fatal wound was on his neck. He had defensive wounds on his hands, but not many. Ronald and Nicole had been in close contact recently. That night, Nicole and her family were eating at the restaurant. Her mother's glasses case was accidentally left at the restaurant, so Nicole called Ronald for help. Upon hearing this, Ronald immediately clocked out and delivered the glasses case. Unexpectedly, this delivery cost him his life. The police did indeed find the return glasses case inside the house. In addition, next to Ronald was a knit ski cap, a white envelope, a pager, and a torn piece of paper. Most importantly, there was also a left-hand Aris brand leather glove, covered in bloodstains. There were also many bloody footprints in the house, leading through the back gate. Based on the distance of the footprints, the killer did not run away in large strides after the act. Fleeing the scene, it was more like they casually walked away. There were also some blood drops to the left of the footprints. After testing, the blood drops did not belong to the victims. They likely belonged to the killer. Police believe the killer's left hand was injured during the commission of the crime. Police believe the killer was specifically targeting Nicole. From the fact that Nicole had almost no defensive wounds and no blood on the soles of her feet, it can be seen that the process was very quick. After swiftly finishing off Nicole, the killer encountered Ronald, who had come to deliver the glasses case. The killer was unexpectedly seen. Without much hesitation, they chose to silence him. Because Ronald was young and strong, there was a struggle between him and the killer. Ultimately, he was overpowered and tragically harmed. No valuables were missing from the house, and there were no signs of forced entry. And Nicole's 2 children were sleeping soundly upstairs, completely unharmed. Police guessed the killer was not after money, nor did they seem to hate the family. It seemed more like they knew Nicole and had a personal grudge, so they only attacked her. And Ronald was just purely unlucky, happening to deliver something and see the killer, which is why he was silenced. After investigating this far, the case suddenly took a turn. The LAPD Westside Precinct was no longer responsible for the case. They handed over the clues they found to the incoming investigation team. At 4 a.m., Senior Detective Philip Banneter arrived at the scene. He had worked for the LAPD for 25 years and was a very experienced officer. Banneter decided to notify Simpson first, but he didn't know where he lived. But another detective at the scene, Mark Furman, he knew, because he had previously handled Simpson's domestic disputes. Everyone, this is a key point. Remember this name, he has a big role later. So Banneter took Furman and 2 other detectives to Simpson's residence. This was an upscale community. The 4 of them found the large villa in the dark. The villa was surrounded by a 6-foot-high wall, but no matter how they rang the doorbell, no one answered. No one answered the phone either. At this time, Furman was looking at the Bronco parked in front of Simpson's house. He suddenly stopped the others and said he found something. On the driver's side door handle, at the bottom of the car door, and on the door sill, he found 5 stains. These were very likely blood stains. Through the license plate, they found the car belonged to the Hertz rental company, and Simpson had a deep partnership with this company. Everyone sensed something was wrong. The 4 discussed that getting someone to identify the blood stains would take at least 1 or 2 hours. Applying for a search warrant would also take too long. What if Simpson was inside the house and in some kind of danger? They would lose the optimal rescue time. In the end, they decided to go inside first. Furman climbed over the wall and opened the outermost gate. They started ringing the doorbell of the house inside. Still no response. When they walked to the side where the 3 guest rooms were, they finally saw a figure. After repeated knocking, the drowsy Kato Kalin finally got up. Kalin was a tenant in Simpson's house. In response to the police's questions, Kalin said he didn't know Simpson's whereabouts and told the police to ask Arnell in the next guest room. Arnell was Simpson's daughter from his first wife. She was also confused and didn't know where her father was. However, she had the key to the main house. After opening the door, they found Simpson wasn't home at all. She then called Simpson's personal secretary, Kathy Randa. Kathy told the police that Simpson had taken a red-eye flight to Chicago for an important meeting. The time was now 6:05 a.m. Detective Phillips called the hotel and got in touch with Simpson. He informed him that his ex-wife Nicole had been murdered. Simpson sounded very agitated upon hearing the news. He shouted, "Oh my God! Nicole was killed? Oh my God! She's dead?" On the other side, the questioning of the tenant, Kalin, continued. Kalin said that around 10:50 p.m. last night, while I was talking to a friend on the phone, I suddenly heard several heavy thumps on the bedroom wall behind me. Even the painting on the wall shook. I thought it was an earthquake at the time. Furman quickly went to check behind the wall. Behind the wall was a pathway covered in branches and leaves. He walked about 6 meters and saw a leather glove on the ground. Coincidentally, it was a right-hand glove. There was some sticky substance on it, which was likely blood. Previously, at Nicole's murder scene, a left-hand leather glove was found. To verify if the 2 gloves were a pair, a detective specially ran back to Nicole's house to confirm. At 6:21 a.m., a detective called to notify Nicole's family. Nicole's father remained relatively calm upon hearing the bad news, but when her sister Denise heard it, she immediately screamed, "He did it!" He finally did it. The police asked who he was. Denise answered without hesitation, Simpson. After confirming the two gloves were a pair, Vanater formally applied for a search warrant, deciding to conduct a thorough search of Simpson's house. On June 13th at nearly 1 p.m., Simpson finally arrived home. Although the police intended to block the news, the media was not to be underestimated. The news had already spread. At this time, several streets outside his house were packed with photographers and reporters. As soon as Simpson walked through the front door, a detective named Thompson walked over. He took him to a corner of the yard, a more secluded spot, and handcuffed him. Thompson was acting on Vanater's orders to detain Simpson. His intention was not to let the media know, so he deliberately walked to a secluded spot in the yard to act. But despite all precautions, a photographer named Ron Edwards had his camera perched on top of the outer wall and happened to capture this very scene. As this scene of Simpson being handcuffed was exposed, America went into an uproar. The illustrious Simpson was actually arrested. Usually, when police arrest someone, they have sufficient reason and evidence. Now, this public arrest led many people to believe the police had already found evidence and identified Simpson as Nicole's killer. But, in reality, the police did not have enough evidence at this time. This triggered strong protests from many Americans, especially African Americans. They believed the police's actions were an extremely unjust act of racial discrimination. Soon, at the request of Simpson's hired lawyer, Howard Weitzman, the police removed Simpson's handcuffs and took him to the police headquarters for questioning. Simpson stated at the time that he was willing to be questioned by the police alone. Lawyer Howard also agreed to this request. For the next 32 minutes, Simpson faced two detectives alone and answered many questions. The attentive detectives noticed a cut on Simpson's left middle finger. This matched the police's speculation that the killer's left hand was injured. Regarding this coincidence, Simpson's answers were very inconsistent. First, he said that after learning the bad news about Nicole, he accidentally cut it in Chicago. But when the police pointed out that bloodstains were also found in the Bronco he drove, Simpson then said he accidentally cut his finger on June 12th. In the end, to prove his innocence, Simpson voluntarily let the police draw a blood sample for testing. After the questioning ended, the police released Simpson. So for this questioning, Simpson was willing to undergo it alone. But as a lawyer, not insisting on being present was clearly a major blunder. This also led to lawyer Howard facing widespread criticism, so he was quickly off the case. On June 14th, the third day after the incident, Simpson hired the famous Los Angeles lawyer Robert Shapiro and began to assemble his legal team. This team's lineup was nothing short of star-studded, later known as the Dream Team. Members included famous lawyer Robert Kardashian, Johnny Cochran, world-renowned forensic pathologist Michael Baden, Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz, famous criminal lawyer F. Lee Bailey, and renowned DNA legal expert Barry Scheck, among others. Of course, Shapiro also invited Dr. Henry Lee, who was in Connecticut at the time. Because Dr. Lee was too busy with work, he did not agree to join at first. But Shapiro invited him again and again, so Dr. Lee proposed one condition: that he would only speak according to the facts. Even if evidence unfavorable to Simpson was found, he would say it without hesitation. After Shapiro agreed, Dr. Lee officially joined and began heading to Los Angeles. Meanwhile, the prosecution, led by experienced prosecutor Marcia Clark, including her supervisor Bill Hodgman, etc., began working day and night to evaluate the evidence in the case. Because it involved Simpson, they dared not be the slightest bit careless. Only after gathering sufficient evidence could they arrest Simpson. Finally, criminalist Colin Yamauchi, after 2 days of DNA testing, confirmed that the blood found at Nicole's murder scene matched the blood provided by Simpson. On the right-hand glove found at Simpson's house, they found the blood of Simpson and both victims. At this point, the prosecution believed they had sufficient evidence. On June 17th, an arrest warrant for Simpson was officially issued. He was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. At 8:30 a.m., The LAPD notified lawyer Shapiro, telling him Simpson must surrender that day, or the consequences would be severe. Shapiro notified Simpson, and Simpson agreed to surrender. However, Shapiro hoped the police would postpone the surrender deadline to noon at the latest. After all, Simpson had already agreed to surrender, and as a celebrity, it was impossible for him to flee unnoticed. The LAPD agreed to this request.
洛杉矶警方同意了这个请求。
But very quickly, the LAPD publicly announced the news of Simpson's arrest and prepared to go arrest him. Mr. Simpson has not appeared. The Los Angeles Police Department right now is actively searching for Mr. Simpson. The media and public who heard the news all crowded outside the police station. It was said there were over 1,000 people. But they waited and waited, only to be met with the news that Simpson had already fled. That's right, Simpson couldn't flee unnoticed. He chose to flee publicly. Turns out, after Simpson learned he was a suspect, he had been very agitated and uneasy. He locked himself in the house and wrote 3 letters, one to his children, one to his mother, and one to the public. Then he followed his good friend Al Cowlings and escaped through the back door. Only when the police came to arrest him did they discover Simpson was already gone. This sudden development was something not even the dream team of lawyers had anticipated. Everyone just stared at each other. With Simpson on the run, the police immediately stated that everyone on the dream team legal team could be arrested for aiding his escape. Simpson sat in the back seat of the White Bronco. Cowlings drove the car, heading straight for the California freeway. The police, of course, would not let him escape. They quickly located Simpson's car. Subsequently, a large number of police cars went in pursuit. 6 helicopters followed from the air, and news media camera cars also followed, broadcasting live. A live TV broadcast of a suspect fleeing, and a major celebrity at that. It was hard for Simpson not to become famous. TV stations even interrupted the broadcast of that year's NBA Finals to exclusively show footage of Simpson's escape. Americans all stopped what they were doing to intently watch the chase on the road. It's said the streets of Los Angeles were empty at that time. Everyone was watching the live broadcast. It's said that over 95 million Americans watched Simpson's escape live. You have to know that year's Super Bowl was only watched by 90 million people. The total U.S. population at that time was only about 260 million, which means at least 1/3 of Americans watched that live broadcast. Many Americans even came directly to the roadside to cheer Simpson on, even holding up banners. This real-time pursuit operation not only caused an uproar in the United States, but the eyes of the whole world were also focused on it. It successfully attracted a huge audience for the trial of the century to come. This farce ended at 8 p.m. At that time, Simpson was in the car with a gun, attempting suicide. He said he was the only one who was hurt and just wanted to be with Nicole. He later compromised. He hoped the police would stop chasing and that he would go home on his own. At 8 p.m., Simpson returned home. He sat in the car for about 45 minutes before getting out holding a family photo. He went back into the house, drank a glass of orange juice, and talked with his mother for a while. When lawyer Shapiro arrived, Simpson surrendered to the LAPD. What followed was the trial of the century, which attracted countless attention and became the most complex in American and even world history. But unfortunately, the progress bar can't hold on. We'll save the trial of the century for next time.